Ready to hit the pause button on your parenting fails? Ready to feel better about your parenting? Welcome to Parenting Pause, the podcast, where all of you is welcome. I'm Leslie Potter, the founder of the Pure Joy Way, a mother, a parent coach, and a fellow traveler on this journey to wake up in our parenting. And I believe together we can make this a better world for ourselves and our kiddos. If you listen to the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about emotional maturity, emotional intelligence, what that looks like, and why it's important in our parenting. And yet we haven't talked a whole bunch about what are the skill sets and how do we get these skill sets, since we weren't taught the skill sets of emotional maturity or what that looks like when we were children. How do we gain those skill sets? That became my mission in my parenting because I noticed it was just crazy how young I was and how often my mother's words came out of my mouth again. And that was so shocking to hear her words come out of my mouth. And yet, when I really dug deep, I could see how emotionally wounded I felt, especially when my daughter began to set some emotionally mature boundaries for herself. And I took it so deeply into my heart and felt rejected and abandoned. And then I acted like a rejected person. So my curiosity got really, really high of like, okay, there's got to be something here that I didn't learn. And I began to look around and dig deep. And unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of material 20 years ago around emotional intelligence and maturity. So I was kind of out there on my own. And this, in a way, was actually helpful and supportive because I wasn't reading concepts. I was actually going inside to actually understand my internal experience. And the main practice that I created, which I love being able to share with each of you, is the safe seat. And if you don't know what that is or don't have a copy, go to my front web page and you can sign up for a free 5-day video series on that. This became my sacred seat. I called it my safe seat for years, but now it is my sacred seat. And the way I imagined it was that it is the greater part of me. It could be the parent, it could be the greater part, it could be God, Goddess, whatever works for you. You can use that, but it is a unconditional part of you that is there to see, hear, and understand your emotional story that gets activated with your children and in your parenting. So the reason we need one of those, this is what we begin to create for ourselves. It's a container of loving kindness. And most of us did not have a container of loving kindness for our emotions. Now, you may have had a very loving, kind home and may have been encouraged, but I want you to think about, and yes, there are some, but most of us, I want you to think about what it was like when you got angry in your home. What it was like when you felt powerless and you acted out by hitting your brother or your sister. How were you treated when big, intense emotions came up? When you felt rejected at school by your friends? How were you treated? Was someone able to see, hear, and understand you, or were they trying to fix it? Often when a child comes home and they feel rejected, it can trigger a really deep, intense place in the parent, and they may try to fix it or change it or talk you out of it or go to the school and try to fix it. It's really a skill set to be able to be present with another human being as they're riding the emotional waves. And the main way we can do this is to remember we are not the waves. Your child is not their emotional waves. That is the content of what is happening within the context of their experience of who they are in their life. And yet, emotional waves, since we weren't taught to ride them, to be with them, we were taught to try to control them, because they do come out in behavior. This is the tricky part, right? You have a feeling and something comes up inside your body, and you have a sensation and a feeling and a story, and then you act out. And so in this culture, again, we work so much with the acting out part. But here, what we do is we go to the part way before the acting out happened, to begin to see, hear, and understand those feelings. Now, over time, what this does, as you safe seat, you keep offering kindness over and over and over to those feelings, those sensations, those stories that come up, which most likely are not true. They are perceived realities. Again, we perceive from our amygdala, from our primal brain. If we're perceiving from there, we're going to see something as dangerous. And so in the safe seat, we are creating a safe place, a sacred space where we can go and really check out, is our perception true? Are we really in danger when our children don't listen to us? Are we really in danger when they won't do what we ask them to do? Well, we sure do act like it, right? I mean, it's really intense. I've been there and I know. And yet, what I began to discover, if I didn't go in and check out, was it really dangerous? I acted as if my daughter, just doing her thing and being emotionally young and trying to set boundaries, I saw her whole development, her emotional development, as a threat to me. So my parenting became all about me, and yours might too, because emotionally I was still really, really young. And so I hadn't emotionally developed to a place where I could tolerate intensity of emotion. That's what we work with in our safe seat. To be able to stay with that, to be able to hear the story, not to agree with it, not to talk myself out of it, but to see, hear, and understand the feeling part of me that gets activated in my parenting. So I'm going to support you as having that as your base. That's one of the base foundations of beginning to create emotional maturity. And over time, what this does is it begins to build when this loving kindness of your safe seat wraps you in love, instead of trying to get your children to wrap you in love, because they're not going to do it. They're in their own emotional world. As you keep doing that, it begins to build and build and build until eventually you become that act of kindness, because you've practiced and you've built up in your system. And then your regulatory system, when your child, emotionally young, gets activated, which they are, little emotional young brains get activated all the time, you will be able to attune to their activation, but it will not activate your story and your feelings and your big waves. You will be able to stay in the context of being that sacred space for them to grow up emotionally. Thank you for listening to this episode of Parenting Paused. If you enjoyed the episode, do me a favor and share it with your mama friends. You can also leave a review wherever you listen, which will support getting the Pure Joy message out. Come on over to the Pure Joy Parenting Practice Facebook page, or join me on Instagram to hear more. And don't forget to download your free copy of the Safe Seat course on the Pure Joy website. And while there, check out the offerings page to go deeper in the Pure Joy work.